Welcome back, guys. For this little video, we are creating a memorial piece. So it is a very special piece, and it is actually something that is going to take a number of different layers, which I'll explain why. So it means we are actually doing it over a few day period. So tune in, but what I'm going to go through with you is what I've got here, what I'm going to use, and how I'm going to go about it. So let's get started. So I have chosen with this particular piece because this is in memorial of a little dog named Tilly, and I've got a number of different pieces that we've collected here. So I've got a lovely silicone mould that'll suit this theme, and the reason I've chosen this one as well is just because it has a flat base. So for memorial piece, after this is finished, we're able to stand it up, don't need any additional support. But as you can see, I've got a number of different items here. I have laid them out because I do want to check my composition and make sure this will all work. But the plan is to actually give it a little bit of depth and layer the pieces. So with all of these pieces here, I will be removing them. I have taken a photo so I remember their exact positioning as I'm adding layers and adding items to each layer. But we will be using Deep Cast to do this. So each layer will be using our Resi Deep Cast, which I've already pre-mixed, measured here. So if you want any info on how we've done that, make sure you check out the video in the link. But I'm only doing a very thin layer to start with, and that's to secure this little guy, because this little bear here is almost the depth of my mould, and I want to aim to ensure that I can secure it into place and lock it into position without it falling over, and then layer up around it and basically pop in our photos, pop in the collar, and pop in the little vials of hair as well in the additional layers. So by doing a thin layer to start with, it allows me to not only secure this little bear into position, but it also allows me to have a thicker layer here where I can then put the flatter images of the paw prints, the little nose print, and the photos of Tilly in there and raise them up. So they're not actually flat on the back side of my memorial piece. So if I ever was to need to sand it or level it or anything like that, I'm not affecting those images and those little prints. I've lifted them up in a layer of resin. So what I'm going to do now is, because I have pre-mixed my resin, I'm going to remove everything except for my bear and make sure I've cleaned out my mould as well, and then we'll pour our layer in and I'll secure my bear. Now that even may mean I might have to hold some tape against the top side of the bear because I'm not completely filling over the bear. I'm only filling in the bottom side of the bear, but I do want to hold it in position as this resin cures. And with our Resi Deep Cast, we have a gel time of around about 24 hours. So I do want to pour my next layer in that 24-hour time period. Even though the Resi Deep Cast takes 7 to 10 days to fully cure, I want to make sure I'm capturing my next layer pour with that gel time. So that way I can decrease the look of my layers in my job. So let's get started. So like I said, I have mixed up a portion. I will note too that I did put like a quarter of our translucent jet black dye into this mixture. I do like to do this for pieces that we want to last the time, because I feel that it helps ever so slightly counteract any yellowing, and all resin will yellow slightly over time. Different brands will depend on how much that happens and how quickly that happens. Our Resi Deep Cast is amazing with its UV stability and anti-yellowing. So it's something that I can trust and rely on over the long term, but I just want to help in case a little bit of that happens. So I'm ready to pour now. So I'm going to just pour in my thin layer, just so I'm covering the base here, and I can sit my little bear in to position and help hold it in position. It also helps stopping the bear from floating with me keeping this layer very thin and not filling up immediately around it. So if I sit the bear too far back, its little head goes backwards and its legs lift higher. So I actually need the legs to stay up. So this is where I'm going to just tape this leg here against my silicone mould, and that way I can keep it in position as the little bear's starting to lock into position as the resin's starting to gel off. I just want to attach it to its leg. Just make sure I've got some good contact there and hold it in position just like that at the moment. So I can still see that my little bear's leg is just under the height of the silicone mould there. I can feel that. Little bear's central, doesn't look like it's going to move at the moment, so I'm going to let this sit now for 24 hours and we'll come back, and then I'll be layering on my photos and my little paw prints and then doing another thin layer over the top of that. Now, all I have to look out for at this stage, the bubble release on our Resi Deep Cast is absolutely amazing, so I don't actually need to do anything with it. I don't ever use isopropyl on our Deep Cast to pop bubbles because I do find that it leaves a little bit of a different textured skin on the layer. So if I was to find any bubbles, and even bubbles that may possibly come out the little bear, I might use a heat gun to actually remove those. So I'll just monitor this over the next few hours to double check that these bubbles release really well, that my bear stays in position, and we'll be back again tomorrow to put in another layer. Hi guys, welcome back. Day 2 now, and we've let our first layer sit in here, not touched it, not sprayed it. I didn't even put a heat gun on it. All our bubbles have released. Our little bear held in position really well, but as we are only just reaching a little bit of a gel time here, we still have a lot of flexibility in this layer. So I do have to be very gentle. My bear will still move. So I do have it still taped down on the leg here, but the reason I've removed the rest off the rest of its body is because I actually want to use our Resi Ultra Cure just to secure its bow in place. I also will be coating the top of these little corks and the top of these vials just to seal them in, to make sure when I do get ready to embed these that I'm not going to have any of my resin leak inside the vials, because we have some pretty precious little cuts of hair here and I don't want that ruined. So I do want to make sure that I have a complete seal on the top of these, so that way when I do embed them, no resin's going to seep inside them. So I'm going to do this first, and the reason why I want to get the bow in position and try hold it in so it's got a little bit of shape is because this layer I intend on pouring a little bit more over the top of the bear, just so I can get a coating in position and hold it into position a little bit better. It still won't be a full layer, but I want to get some more resin on it to help start securing it into position, and that will mean that my bow will potentially flop and change shape with the weight of the resin. So if I can hold it a little bit in position with our Ultra Cure, it'll be best for positioning with our final piece. Okay, so the only extra things I've got here are, I have obviously our Ultra Cure, I have a UV torch, blacklight torch, and I also have a lamp here, so I can have a couple of the little vials under the lamp at the same time. And I also have a picture of my composition. This is kind of really important because at this stage I mentioned before that this layer is quite sticky. I don't want to be trying to put down items on this layer and accidentally put them in the wrong position, because it'll be extremely hard to remove them without making a big mess and creating bubbles and indenting this layer that I've already poured. So I have got my picture here, and I want to be very specific on where my items were positioned so I can basically put them straight in there without moving. And aside from that, I have already mixed up our Resi Deep Cast, put 1/4 of a drop of our translucent black in it, much the same way as we did yesterday. So make sure you are referring to our measuring mixing video if you'd like more details on that. So let's get started. Okay, I've got my torch on ready to go. I'm literally just trying to keep some height in position with the bow. So I'm going to tack the corner here of the bow to the little bear's fur, hold it in position while I pop the UV torch on it. Once it's tacked in position, I can add a little bit more in to secure it and pop that UV torch straight back on it. Just testing it to see if it's got any tack to it. If it does feel like it's a little bit tacky still, it still needs to remain under the UV black light, because if it's still a little bit tacky, that means it's not cured properly. I'm just doing the other side of the bow now, same method, just tacking the side of the ribbon to the side of the little bear's leg. It's just to keep that shape up, because if I didn't do that, the ribbon would just basically sink back down either side of the bear's head and flop, so to speak, just with the weight of the resin. So this will help keep it up a little bit. Some of it's obviously still going to soak up the resin and it will change shape a little bit, but this will just help it stay in position a little bit better. Okay, I'm happy with that positioning of the bow at the moment. While we've got our Ultra Cure out and our UV resin out, like I mentioned before, I'm going to just do a thin coating over this little cork top at the moment on this vial. I'll probably build it up. I'll aim not to have it sort of too thick, And just make sure I have a thorough seal on it. And I'll pop that straight under my lamp. I'll hold it for a second just to keep it in position, and then I'll be able to sit it down with the lamp on it while I'm doing the next one. So while I'm quickly tacking this one off before I put it under the lamp, the reason I am actually sealing them up is, especially these cork ones, is cork is porous. So it means that the resin can seep through, and if I don't seal it quickly and use in particular the Ultra Cure, because I know that that can dry in 5 minutes time. If I don't seal it and it's sitting in like the Deep Cast when it's still quite fluid for a few days, it means that there's a chance for that resin to seep inside the cork and into the layer of the fur that we have, and that's not what we want because we want to keep it dry. I'll just pop this other little one down. Now these little vials, even though they don't have a cork in them, they're a little plastic plug, and I can't actually either guarantee those have a solid waterproof seal either. So I am going to put UV just on the top of those as well, just to make sure I do have a watertight seal. For the same reason, I don't want resin seeping into this vial and making my fur discolor and look wet. I want it to look dry. I can already see one bubble here seeping out of the seal. And that's what I mean. So it wasn't a watertight seal. So I do want to attempt to sort of pop that and open it up, although the top layer of my resin started to cure. My top layer is cured really well, but my underlayer is still quite wet. So I might just peel this off, quickly give a zap of the underlayer and then top it up. I don't want to trap any additional bubbles in this. So it still had a thin wet layer on this one, so I'm just tacking that off now. Okay, so we've sealed up our little vials, we've positioned our ribbon. Now I need to have the delicate task of putting in my little paw prints, my little nose print, and our couple of images that we have of little Tilly here. Because it is quite delicate, I don't want my gloves to touch the resin, so I am going to take my gloves off at this point. If I do happen to get any resin on my hands, I will immediately clean it with isopropyl and a clean rag. But I need to be able to have a little bit better precision and control with popping these pieces in. So this little paw print here, I had almost sitting close to the front, but almost sort of in the position beside the head and the arm of the little bear. I'm going to make sure we've got it right. I think is about there. And gently put it down. And you can still see that my resin is quite wet at this stage. And then above that, because we are going to have Tilly's little collar go around it, we have the little nose print, which we're sitting just off to the side here, but enough room for our little vials at the top. It's kind of very nerve-wracking because, like you can see, as soon as it sort of sits in position, there's no pulling it back out. I also need to mention that each of these paw prints and the little images of Tilly have actually been laminated, and then we cut very close as we can to the edge of the image without opening that laminate seal. But this is the best way to retain colour quality, to ensure that you don't have any of the colour bleeding out into your resin. Heaps of different factors, because it really does depend on what paper you print on or what photo paper you use as well. And there can be so many factors that can change the colour, have colour leach out. So I do find that this is a pretty safe method. Plus it also helps keep your image flat. So all these pieces have been laminated. Now, as I've layered these, I've actually layered the little top of the paw print on top of this image of Tilly. So this is the first one that has to go in. I'm pretty close to the side here, and I'm on a bit of an angle. I'm about in this position here. The next one on top is on a bit of an angle as well. We have got the corner of the image coming near Tilly's scarf and ear on the bottom image. And we are near the top of the heart here, so very close to this angle here. And our little paw print just laps over the bottom side of this first image of Tilly. So this is all I'm going to put on this layer. We'll pour our resin in. Then we'll come back tomorrow and do an additional layer where I'm putting in Tilly's collar and we'll be putting in all of our little vials that we've just sealed up as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I am going to pour over the bear, so that way I'm getting a little bit of resin on the bear as well and helping give it that extra security as I'm pouring the layers in to hold it in position, because we still do need to keep the little bear taped down. Okay, the beauty about Deep Cast when you're using it is that the pot life is a couple of hours, so you have time to mix it up and let it sit there and get your compositions right and then pour it. So that's what we're going to do now. So like I said, I'm going to be very gentle and start with my pour over the top of our little bear, just slowly. And see, I'm doing this at this stage too, because if my ribbon happens to not go in a position I am not looking for, I can at least try to, as the resin's starting to thicken up and dry, sort of just move it into position a little bit better. And it's obviously easier to do that when the ribbon and the bear aren't submerged completely. Another reason I want to coat the bear is because you would have just seen that its little lips, they could potentially be painted on. If I'm just doing a thin layer, it helps me sort of seal it in versus pouring it straight in a deep layer where the colour could leach under a thicker layer and you would actually see it sort of coming up like smoke almost. But because it's a thin layer and it's not fully submerged at the moment, it avoids that happening. Now, I won't be able to coat every single bit of the bear, but coming back tomorrow and the following day, if we need to top it up any further, we'll be able to capture it then, and it's not going to have any colour differentiation between layers or anything like that, because it's still going to absorb the resin the exact same way. One beauty about pouring your layers so close when it's just before tack-off time is that it's harder to actually see your layers afterwards. When you're looking at a piece from front on, it is extremely hard to see any layers at all. From the side, you will see some slight layers, but if you're still pouring on top of the next layer close to gel time, it eliminates the definition in those layers as much as what it would be if you were to let it dry completely and fully cure and then pour another layer over the top of it. So that's another reason I like to pour layers pretty quickly in any of these embedding pieces, especially when they're a special memorial piece. Now, I do have one little bubble that looks like it's trapped under the pores here. So I do want to just pull this one up and just make sure it's not going to stay tacked there where stuck to the laminate. There's a couple of little bubbles trapped on the underside of the laminate here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to remove those or not. There we go, another one stuck underneath where the overlapping of these ones were. There is a small chance by pushing down these laminated pieces that they may have trapped a bubble on the underside, which I'm not overly concerned about because the memorial piece is designed to be viewed from the front. It's not double-sided. You can make them sometimes where they're double-sided, where you can see an image on both sides, for instance. But being the fact that we've used a bear like this, there's no way, I mean, visually you wouldn't want to be looking at the back side of the bear. So I'm pretty much going to leave this now, just making sure I haven't trapped any bubbles around the outside edge on my silicone mould. And other than that, I'm going to let the other bubbles come to the top and burst themselves. I know that our Deep Cast has really good bubble release. So same as what I did with the bottom layer, I didn't touch it, let it do its thing. So I'm going to come back tomorrow and we'll add our additional pieces on and we'll pour another layer. Hi guys, welcome back for day 3 now. And we are going to be putting in our little vials of Tilly's hair that we sealed up yesterday with our Ultra Cure, along with her little collar here. So the plan is today I have measured out and mixed up a tiny bit more resin, but in the same manner that I have in the last couple of days, and a quarter of a drop of our jet black dye in it as well. So remember, if you do want more info on the measuring and mixing, check out our link. So like yesterday, this layer is still quite sticky and has got a lot of movement in it. So my plan is to try pop these items in position as best as I can without having to move them at all. And again, I'm going to refer to the photo that I'd taken of our composition and for me to be able to put those in. So one of the most important parts about this one is Matilda's little collar, and I want to make sure her name is sitting upright. So I also need to make sure it's not covering too much of the little paw print or the nose print as well. So I'm going to attempt to do that. I won't put gloves on just for this step because I do want to make sure I have as much precision as possible, and that I also don't get my gloves stuck in the resin. So I'm going to attempt that first. And we'll try keep it as round as possible as well. I think it was flipped over last time, but I do want to make sure we've got Matilda's little name forward. So what I'm going to do is just hold that little tab, position it just above our little bear. Okay, I think we've got that right there. Okay, so the decision is made. I will be putting the larger vials on the top of this side. I think it will balance it out a little bit too, because we'll have a lot going on what is the left side when you look at it front on. So I'll put the little ones near the collar. So I'll pop those in now. Those two in position there. And then we'll put our larger vials in now, sort of staggered as well. So now it's time to pour over these. And the aim is to gently pour over the collar as well to make sure I've got full coverage of the collar and I can manage any bubbles. I might even use my stirrer to layer some of the resin in, just so it's not so aggressive, because our underneath layer is still a fair bit sticky. So I just want to be as gentle as possible. Now my little bottles are floating with a little bit of air in them, so I may be able to rig up something similar to what I've done with the bear, just to keep them secured in that underneath layer, which they tend not to be sticking in at the moment. They're sort of lifting up with it. So I don't want them moving around too much. So if I get one of my stirrers and put it across all three in the base, I should be able to just tape it into position, to hold them in position. And then I'll remove that stirrer probably in another few hours, because remember, I mean, this top layer is quite fluid, but remember we're attaching it to the bottom layer, which is starting to gel off. So we should be able to remove it without too many marks. Plus we will be doing another top-up layer on this one, just to cover everything and bring the resin to the top of our silicone mould. I've got a little acrylic panel here that I had cut previously that I'll just take the edging off. Tape off, I should say, not edging off. And the reason I want to use acrylic is I don't want to stick wood in, whether it's a skewer or an art stick, into the resin to hold it in place, because a fair bit of the oxygen bleeds out of timber items like that. And I want to try eliminate any micro bubbles. So something like an acrylic little piece is perfect, because it's solid plastic, so it won't actually release any oxygen bubbles at all. It's not porous at all. Let's clean up a little bit of our spillage in case we need to tape down on that side. Position them, make sure they're not covering the little image underneath. When doing little fiddly bits like this, you've really got to sort of plan out what you're doing, and it's good to have an extra hand to help. Thanks, Raz. So my acrylic piece is just balanced underneath this tape here. I don't really think I need a great deal more on it. It's just my little guys here now as well, but I might see how they go. Might be able to squash them down securely enough in the bottom layer. With the little guys, I've just sort of tried to push them down quite firmly into the resin, because they're smaller and they don't have as much air in the vial itself. It's quite successful at the moment, but there's no real limit to how far you could push down. I guess the only issue is your composition and getting the effect of the layers and the height between the items that you're embedding. What you want to be mindful of is, if you are putting a little bit of pressure on items that you're trying to push down and secure into that stickier layer, just don't accidentally slip off the item and put your skewer, paddle pop stick, whatever it is, into the resin and try lift it back out, because it may stick to that and when you try to pull that back out, you'll actually get a big glob of resin out, and that's when the heaps of micro bubbles and that can be trapped inside that thicker layer that is moving around. So it's something that you do have to be very delicate with. Okay, like with all of my other layers, the Deep Cast has amazing bubble release, so I'm going to let it do its thing. I will keep an eye on the collar to make sure that, because it is made of material, that we don't have too many bubbles sort of bleeding back out of it and just attaching itself to the collar. So I may come in and just lift a bubble or two out if I manage to be able to move them. And so we can bring those to the top, let them pop naturally. But aside from that, I'm going to let it do its own thing. I'm going to let it cure on its own. And our top-up layer will be exactly as we've done here, but we won't be embedding anything else. So it'll literally be a layer bringing our resin right to the top of the surface here, with an attempt to fill as much of our bare and cover as much of our bare as possible. So we'll see you guys when we are ready to demold. We waited our 10 days. I demolded our silicone mold off the outside of this. Now I did sand the top and the sides to remove some marks from the silicone mold, and I actually worked my way down from 120 to 240 and then went to 400 and 600 for this piece, because I did want to make sure when I put my flood coat on it that I got a nice bit of clarity out of it. So I did that, did a very thin coat of my Resi Clear. Prior to that, I did our method of putting our Elmer's glue on the back, so please make sure you refer to our video on that one if you want to see how we did that. Now it's time for me to remove my glue and remove my drips off the back so we can have our final piece. So I'm just going to aim for a bubble here. I do want to be gentle with removing this because I don't want to scratch my underside of my piece. There we go. I knew once I got that release we'd be able to get it up. And we have a really nice clean back underside. I love this method. This is such a simple method. Letting your Elmer's glue cure, popping your gloss flood coat on the top, and we have our finished piece. So I've got a nice finish on the top and the sides now. So this is just another way to, I guess, have a professional finish on your pieces once removing them from the silicone mold. But I'm really impressed with the way our little pieces come out for Tilly. So if you do have any questions about this process, please leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.